Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Thursday, June the 20th, 2013. A mortar shell fired from Syria exploded in an orchard near Kibbutz Lor in the Golan Heights in Israel today. No injuries were reported. This was the second mortar shell in a 24-hour period to land in the area. The earlier shell landed late last night. No injuries were reported there either. The shells are thought to be a result of errant fire from the fighting between Syrian rebels and Syrian troops in the nearby Jopta village in the demilitarized zone in the Golan Heights. A spokesperson for the Palestinian government said that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has yet to read the resignation letter of recently elected PA Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah. As you may have seen on IBA News, Hamdallah, who was just appointed to his position 2 weeks ago, reportedly handed in his resignation today. PA spokesperson Iha Basiso further said that Hamdallah had resigned over a dispute of his power, namely that his authority was undermined by his two deputies. Basiso said that Abbas was expected to decide on whether to accept Hamdallah's resignation letter later today or tomorrow. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that Hamas spokesman Fawzi Baroum said in a statement that Hamdallah's resignation indicates that unilateral steps remain weak, are useless, and do not resolve the internal Palestinian problem. The solution is not in having many governments, it is in implementing the reconciliation agreement. Baroum referring there to efforts between Palestinian factions Fatah, led by Abbas, and Hamas to form a unity government. The Times of Israel reports that Israel's foreign ministry dismissed accusations from a UN Human Rights Committee that claimed Israel mistreats Palestinian minors in the West Bank. The United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child report released last week accuses the IDF of routine physical and verbal violence against Palestinian minors who they detain, mostly due to rock-throwing incidents, and also claims that the IDF uses minors as human shields. Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman Yigal Palmor said the report was drafted without any consultation with Israel and without any investigative work on the ground. He said, obviously, this is not a report that seeks to improve values or improve conditions, and it is only out there to make noise, and we will treat it as such. Palmor referred to another report from UNICEF back in March on the same issues that was drafted in full cooperation with Israeli authorities. That report, he said, although it contained strong criticism as well as praise, was embraced by Israel. However, the UN report, Palmer stated, was clearly not prepared in good faith. He said it is regrettable that a UN report serves as simple bashing. We are going to ignore this background noise and continue working with serious organizations that seek to make actual improvements and not those who just seek to make a headline and bash Israel. Reuters reports that Bulgaria's new government now seems to be back in line with its country's original stance that Hezbollah was in fact behind the terror attack last summer in Burgas that killed 5 Israelis and a Bulgarian bus driver. As we had reported, the country's new foreign minister, Christian Vigenin, had questioned whether there was enough proof of Hezbollah's role in the attack after his new socialist government took over at the end of May, backtracking on the previous government's position. But now, according to several diplomats, Bulgaria is once again on track to urge the European Union to designate Hezbollah as a terror group. The diplomat said that after Vigenin had taken a step back on the initial tough stance against Hezbollah, several EU states lobbied Bulgaria to change their mind. One diplomat said, quote, "It seems that the new government has been testing its limits and has tried to see how far it may go, but once they got a reaction, they quickly stepped back," unquote. In addition, a Bulgarian representative to the EU reportedly said yesterday that investigators have discovered new evidence in the case that further implicates Hezbollah, namely that a Hezbollah operative was the owner of a printer used to produce fake documents that facilitated the deadly attack. As you may have seen on IBA News, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed his frustration with the EU today for their failure to place Hezbollah on their terror list. Netanyahu's comments came at the outset of a meeting with EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton. And finally, the 5th annual Israeli Presidential Conference concluded tonight in Jerusalem with speeches from Israeli President Shimon Peres, Jewish Agency Chairman Natan Sharansky, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who spoke about his commitment to Israel's security and to peace.
I want to achieve peace. Now, the only way to achieve peace, the only way to negotiate a peace and to end the negotiations for peace is to begin the negotiations for peace. We're ready to begin negotiations now without preconditions. And I hope that the Palestinian leadership is equally ready.
Netanyahu said Israel gives U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry all the support in his efforts and said that ultimately the heart of the matter was the willingness of the Palestinians to accept the Jewish state. This, he said, is the most important thing that will determine the success of the peace talks. Shalom TV is at the Israeli Presidential Conference and will be bringing you extensive coverage of this 4-day event. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Thursday, June the 20th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.